Hello, I'm ABX Toycat and welcome back to another History of video. Today I have something a little bit different for you all because we're going to be going through the history of the Wii U. The Wii U is a really unique console that everyone seems to have a very different opinion on, but truth be told, the kind of story as a whole is kind of tragic and it's something I wanted to go through all in today's video. Hopefully you do all enjoy it. If you do, please do like the video and let me know because it helps out the channel a lot and lets me do like this kind of more different varied gaming content. But yeah, let's get straight into it, shall we, by quickly explaining why the background gameplay is Minecraft Wii U. It's not only because it's kind of a newish game, it released somewhat recently, which is kind of a big deal for Nintendo, but also because of the fact that if you play a lot of Nintendo games on YouTube, Nintendo will claim the video, which is bad for a whole bunch of reasons, and I just don't want to go into that, so instead, yeah, a bunch of Minecraft stuff, just because blame Nintendo. But yeah, let's get straight into it, shall we? By talking, I guess to start the Wii U story, you have to go back in time to before the Wii itself came out, because basically when the GameCube, was just at the end of its life cycle, it was actually Nintendo's worst performing console for quite some time. I didn't know this till I looked into it, and I didn't believe it for a while, but basically the NES, when it first released, was Nintendo's most successful console for a very long time. The SNES dropped sales on the NES, the Nintendo 64 dropped sales on the SNES, and then the GameCube dropped sales even lower from the Nintendo 64. And basically, yeah, Nintendo lost a lot of market share during each generation, and even, with the GameCube generation, they were actually the worst selling console in that generation, barring the Dreamcast, if you kind of count that, but still, not doing so great overall, not the best selling of consoles. So presumably this impacted their decision to launch into the 7th generation, because when they launched the Wii, it was massively different to its competition. The Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 both kind of went for the same idea of before. It's like, okay, slightly more powerful, slightly different shape, slightly better gaming box than before with a slightly different shaped controller, whereas the Wii went entirely different. It launched a brand new type of console, it launched a brand new control scheme, the motion controls, which is still very divisive to this day, because of course, hardcore gamers do not like it, it's not as responsive as a controller, but yeah, a lot of people find it's more intuitive if you're not necessarily a gamer. So with that said, very divisive console, but in spite of this, because of the easiness, you can sell a console by saying, hey, look, you got motion controls, it's brand new, but as well as motion controls, it's cheaper than the other two consoles by quite a bit, and as well as that, they had Nintendo exclusives. So these three factors combined and made for a very successful console, and the Wii was their best-selling console ever. It sold way more than even the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube put together, and it was one of the most successful consoles of all time, being third on the list, depending on how you want to count it, usually just after the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation original. So yeah, big selling console, pretty big deal from Nintendo right there. However, the problems they faced with it were quite a few. First of all, like I mentioned, they lost a lot of hardcore gamers that didn't really like the platform because of the lack, the motion controls were kind of weird, but also because the fact that the console didn't support HD, because they didn't focus on power at all, they focused on the price point. But second of all, there was the issue that it had one of the lowest attach rates of any console in history. So if you don't know, attach rate is the number of games they sell per console, and given that Nintendo is both a hardware and a software company, this meant their games didn't sell quite as well as they might have hoped, given that they had one of the most successful consoles of all time. So presumably these two factors combined to make, Nintendo go into their next console, wanting to get the hardcore gamers back. So a successor was planned, as they always are during the console generation, and it was actually revealed at E3 2011.
So today, welcome to the world of Wii U.
And they had a 2012 release date planned. This 2012 release date actually meant that they started the 8th generation of consoles, being first to the market, and it meant they had an early lead over Microsoft and Sony, who both released their console next year in 2013. And the selling point of this console, the Wii U of course, was the tablet-style controller. Nintendo had tried, the mixing things up their controller before was what got them so well, it seemed, so they decided to mix things up again, and given that tablets were on the rise massively at that point, they figured why not have a controller that has a screen on it, and it's still a very unique idea to this day, and that's one of the big selling points of the Wii U. They showed a lot of cool stuff you can do with two screens, kind of like how the DS works, except one of the screens is your TV, one of them is on your controller. Very, very cool idea. People loved it, and if I'm going to be entirely honest, I was really psyched for the idea. I heard about it, and I was like, yeah, that's a really cool idea for a console. However, even though they had this kind of early lead into the generation, and they had the most successful console of last generation, they made a few kind of fatal mistakes that kind of hurt the console, especially in the early days. So the first one seemed to have been their naming of it, the Wii U. So the Wii U was meant to build on the Wii's brand, because the Wii, again, very successful console, might as well build it, right? However, the name was kind of confusing to a lot of people. First of all, hardcore gamers they were trying to attract didn't necessarily like the Wii, so it wasn't so great for them. But also, the big problem with the name Wii U is that a lot of people assumed it was an expansion to the Wii, because, again, Nintendo's consoles had been so massively different in name before that it kind of led to this very bizarre situation where, because it was marketed as the controller rather than as the console, a lot of people saw it and thought, oh, that's an expansion for the Wii. Oh, I haven't used my Wii in so long, I don't really care about it, because That's one of the big problems of the Wii. And yeah, as a result of that, a lot of people saw it and assumed they didn't need it, and it took them a very long time to fix that marketing issue. Now, if you look at any Wii U marketing, it has both the console and the control on the box, but before then, it wasn't so much the case. The second problem that hit the Wii U was kind of a software shortage. So this is a problem with any console if you don't fix it fast enough, but basically the Nintendo, the big selling point for it was, oh, there is Nintendo Land, and Nintendo Land was a really cool idea. It was kind of a bit of everything. It had an F-Zero game in there, and a Legend of Zelda game, but they didn't really feel like it was any of those games. It was kind of mini games based on those games, and as a result of this, a lot of people didn't see it as the killer app you need to buy. It wasn't the equivalent of some form of first Super Mario title, or it wasn't the equivalent of a Legend of Zelda title, and as a result of this, a lot of people just weren't too interested in buying it, and one of the big problems of not having people buy your console is it makes the console less attractive to develop for in the future. So not only did Nintendo not make many games for it early on themselves, Wind Waker HD was their first real title, and even then, it's kind of a HD remake of a game which didn't necessarily need HD remaking, but again, besides that point, not only were there kind of an issue of first-party titles, but because the first-party title kind of led to a lack of sales, this meant that it was less attractive to third-party developers. So EA, for instance, Ubisoft, Bethesda, and Activision all made comments about how they weren't too sure about developing for the system because it just didn't have many sales. In the first year of its going on sale, it had less than 4 million Wii U sold, which is kind of bad, especially compared to that 100 million figure for the Wii, which again, a lot of people didn't develop for the Wii because it was underpowered, and the same issue hit the Wii U. Because the third problem of the Wii U is its specs. So the specs for the Wii U were kind of exciting when it first came out. It was going to beat out the last generation consoles by a little bit, it seemed, and that thought that, oh yeah, I guess it's going to be a better investment than my PS3 if I want to play hardcore games. However, the actual reality of it is even when it was just the 360, the PS3, and the Wii U, when games were released across the three, they generally weren't better on the Wii U. They were generally either the same, sometimes a little bit worse, and this only got worse when the Xbox One and the PS4 released. Because you've got to bear in mind, the PS4 and the Xbox One are already slated quite a bit for not being as powerful as they perhaps should. Compared to other consoles at their time, they're not very powerful compared to PCs, and the Wii U is just a massive step behind even those two consoles, which means if you have a game which is across the three platforms, it's going to be not too great for a lot of people's opinions on the Xbox One, the PS4, and then a massive downgrade from that for the Wii U. And when you combine these three problems, when you have a console which people don't even know is a console, when you have a console people don't really have any games they want to buy for it, and when you have a console that's just not very powerful, especially for the price, it just leads to a lot of people not necessarily wanting it. So yeah, that is the big problem with the Wii U, or the three generally accepted problems: lack of first and third party support on the games, the lack of confusion around the game, but also just the kind of specs of it. Nintendo doesn't necessarily always have to sell their console based on the power of it, but on the other hand, it's not necessarily a selling point that it's less powerful than the other consoles, especially in a competitive generation like this one. So with that said, where are we now with the Wii U? I've gone over all the problems it had, I've gone over all the stuff that happened, but you might actually read into it and see that the Wii U's actually kind of an upturn in a lot of ways, and that's true. It's selling a little bit better than it was in the early days, and the software in particular for the console, the number of units they're actually selling of that is going up quite some, but the console is just not doing very well compared to any other Nintendo console from history, and it's even below the level of, like I said, the GameCube. So yeah, what's the current situation look like? So the Wii U kind of lost this generation. There's winners and there's losing generation. This generation's winner is clearly the PlayStation 4, which has sold 35 million units. The Wii U is currently sitting at 12.6 million, and the Xbox One stopped reporting their figures 2 years ago, but it was at 10 million then, so we can assume it's somewhere between 10 and 20 million, but we don't know where in that ballpark. But still, there's a clear winner of this generation, and it is the PlayStation 4, and the Wii U has actually even been semi-confirmed to be ending production, because a site which usually does pretty well on reporting secret internal Nintendo stuff actually, leaked that out there, and although Nintendo semi-confirmed that they weren't doing it, it really was kind of a little bit of a hint in that direction. But either way, the Wii U is coming very close to the end of its run, which isn't necessarily so great given that most consoles last much more than 4 years before they cease production, but that isn't to say that it's going to be stopped selling in the next year or necessarily the next couple of years, and that means there's still a little bit of time left for the Wii U, and there are some great games coming that way. There is a unconfirmed, or non-named Legend of Zelda game coming, there's a few other cool titles coming, and maybe at the very least Nintendo can turn it into a good console for some games that in, 20, 30 years will be remembered as the golden age of the generation. Who knows? That's just something right there. The Wii U isn't a necessarily commercial success, it's not a critical success, but it's something I think we'll look back on a little bit more positively in the future. And when the NX comes out, maybe people hate it enough that they look back at the Wii U positively. That's one of the dreams, I guess. But in all seriousness, yeah, this was the worst result of a generation for Nintendo, and that's the tragic story of the Wii U. It's a console that was designed to bring back the core gamer. It was a console that had so much going for it, that they had the coolest idea, they had the coolest implementation, but, the market all just kind of conspired against them. Their own marketing, the tablet kind of decline that happened during the reign of the console, and just all these things combined to make a very tragic story for Nintendo that hopefully gets better with their next console. We'll have to see exactly how that does go, but for now, this has been the history of the Wii U. I hope you did all enjoy it. If you did like the video, please do like it and let me know. Share if you really liked it, and subscribe if you are new around here. I make videos like this one every single day on my channel. Let me know if you want to see another like history of a console thing, or like Generation War or something. I'm considering making a few videos like that, because it's something I actually really am interested in. Again, like it really shocked me to find out the GameCube was solo selling, and let me know of the comments and stuff. But other than that, I guess I'll see you all in the next video. So goodbye, everyone.